I think most business people that I know, and I'm not talking just about the US, I'm talking in most parts of the world, except for communist countries where business and society are the same thing, and I'll come on and talk about that, did not regard this as their business. They thought that social issues were government's business. They did not like it. Most business people do not like dealing with governments. Most business people do not like dealing with the media. And most business people certainly don't like dealing with NGOs. So a combination of why should we and I don't like it means that nothing happened. But I believe that business playing an active role in social issues and vice versa is going to be a key determinant of business success, and I believe a key contributor to social welfare. We can debate about whether social welfare is the business of business, but I think we all would agree as human beings and citizens that if you can achieve your business goals and help improve society, it has to be a good thing. So my basic theme is that I hope that the trend, and I believe that the trend where business leaders have to take an active role in helping understand and shape social context with legitimacy is something that is not faddish, it's not temporary, it is permanent, and it will become more real. I think we have to move from what I call the CSR era, which in reality, my observation was primarily about reputation management. Many corporations hiding behind a very thin and spurious moral veil were actually terrified after Enron, terrified after compensation excesses. We might want to talk about CEO comp. And they actually embraced CSR. In reality, we did it for reputational reasons. It was to protect themselves. That's fine, that's sensible. They had an obligation to do that. I'm not knocking it. But it was primarily a defensive move. Particularly in the US and parts of Western Europe, but also in countries like Japan and Southeast Asia as well. So my view is that CSR, which was initially a defensive on the back foot, how do we stop them getting us? How do we do it? Needs to get to a much more proactive point of view. And my particular thesis is that I actually believe that social issues are integral to strategy. So many social issues, for example, environmental issues, are actually sources of business opportunity as well. So my basic thesis is that we need to continue the trend from moving from CSR, being responsible citizens, to a much more activist, proactive approach to building social issues into strategy and accepting all the skill challenges that go with that. Now, the latter part, I would argue, is important. As I said, most leaders, most CEOs are not trained to deal with social issues. Many feel ideologically uncomfortable. I'm not elected. Who am I to start talking about that? These are the thoughtful people. To a skill gap of I've never had any training in dealing with politicians, for example. So I think the second-order implications of what I'm saying are much more important than the first-order ones. For example, many of you, leaders of your companies, destined to be big leaders, I would bet that most of you have had no training on how you deal with NGOs, how you deal with governments, how do you shape regulatory factors in that. You've run your businesses, you've run technology, you've done all that well, but suddenly you get landed in this. Now, I think this is going to become more and more of an issue. I think we talked this morning, I know it's a cliche to say, we are, I think, at the beginning of the next wave of globalization revolution. We talked about it, globalization's been around for 200 years, but I personally believe there is going to be such an explosion, like with the internet. The combination of the internet and globalization is going to magnify the pace and time and impact of these sorts of issues. But what will it take to actually make this happen? If you believe my point that building social issues into strategy on a global perspective is becoming one of the key leadership challenges for business, if you believe that building social issues into strategy is one of the key challenges for global business leaders, what does it actually require doing? Well, I think the first point I would make is what I call analytical mindset. If you believe what I'm saying about social issues, the analytical mindset has to change. Most companies, as they think strategically, think in terms of products, in terms of customers, in terms of competitors. I believe that step one that companies must do is that they must put the same level of analysis and management into understanding context, social context, global context, as they do into understanding their products, understanding their customers, understanding their distribution. It may sound an odd thing to do, but it is capable of analysis. The second point is something I've touched on already, which I would suggest might be on the agenda, is how do you build the relevant leadership capabilities to turn social issues into effective strategies? And I do think that giving high-flying leaders in companies, giving them exposure to social issues, I think is going to be extremely important. I would even predict that the usually much maligned public affairs department, the public affairs will become one of the most important functions in a firm in 10 years' time. I believe that, for example, public affairs will come. I think understanding public affairs, which is seen as a PR arm, is going to become one of the critical components of strategy. Another area which some of you know is actually crucial, but to me that's just a manifestation, is regulatory affairs. I would guess that 1/3 of these people in the room, the biggest determinant of their profitability is the regulatory framework under which they operate. And depending on your view of what we talked about this morning, in my optimistic days, I think business will get ahead of the regulators to make it unnecessary. In my gloomy days, I think we're giving governments no option but to intervene. So basic thesis is that I think smart management, intelligent strategy in the future will bake social issues into strategy. It's a part of business. It's a part of business. I'll finish up with one final thought. I really argued it from what I believe an intelligent point of view. I think there could be a moral dimension to this. Normally, I would have said, be careful. This is what states are to do. This is what politicians are to do. This is why we have elections. But I have to say, and this is just a throw-out teaser, slightly unrelated, that when you go to countries like Africa, you begin to say, who the hell is going to solve this if not business? If business does not get involved in places like Africa, I just do not see the delivery capacity to solve some of the problems there. So one other dimension which I throw open, I blow hot and cold myself. Over and above, there is a smart, logical reason why big business needs to get involved in social issues and vice versa. Where there is a moral argument for doing it, particularly in places like Africa, I'm shifting my ground on that, but that's something we might want to talk about. And I'd love to exchange views that maybe business does have a moral purpose over and beyond duty to shareholders, to citizens, and to employees.